The sound of birds chirping outside the window was the first thing Sarah heard that morning. She opened her eyes slowly and looked at the clock on her nightstand. Her heart stopped for a moment. It was 7:45 a.m. Her alarm had not gone off. She was supposed to wake up at 6:30 a.m. Sarah jumped out of bed so fast that she almost tripped over her own feet. Today was not a day she could be late. Today was the day of Emma's physical therapy appointment. They had been waiting for this appointment for 3 whole months. The therapist was one of the best in the city, and she only took new patients a few times each year. Sarah ran down the hallway to Emma's room. She pushed open the door gently and saw her 7-year-old daughter still sleeping peacefully in her special bed. Emma looked so small and fragile lying there. Her thin arms were tucked under the soft blue blanket that Sarah had bought her last Christmas. "Emma, sweetie, time to wake up," Sarah said softly as she walked to the bed. She touched Emma's shoulder very gently. Emma had cerebral palsy, and mornings were always difficult for her. Her muscles were stiff when she first woke up, and any sudden movement could cause pain. Emma's eyes opened slowly. She looked at her mother and gave a small smile. Sarah's heart melted like it did every single morning when she saw that smile. No matter how hard things got, Emma always found a reason to smile. "Good morning, Mama," Emma said in her soft voice. Her words came out slowly, and some of the sounds were not quite right, but Sarah understood every word perfectly. "Good morning, my love. We need to hurry today. We have your big appointment, remember?" Sarah helped Emma sit up very carefully. She supported Emma's back and neck as she moved her into a sitting position. The morning routine took a long time, just like it always did. First, Sarah had to give Emma her morning medications. There were 3 different pills that Emma needed to take with food. Sarah crushed them up and mixed them with applesauce because Emma had trouble swallowing pills. Then came breakfast. Emma needed special food that was easy to chew and swallow. Sarah had prepared everything the night before, but it still took time. She fed Emma slowly, making sure she took small bites. They could not rush this part, no matter how late they were running. After breakfast, Sarah helped Emma get dressed. This was always one of the hardest parts of the morning. Emma's arms and legs would sometimes move on their own because of her condition. Sarah had to be very patient and very gentle. She chose Emma's favorite purple shirt and soft black pants. She wanted Emma to feel comfortable and happy for her appointment. By the time Emma was dressed, it was already 8:30 a.m. The appointment was at 9:15 a.m., and the therapy center was 20 minutes away if traffic was good. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Emma could always tell when her mother was stressed, and it made Emma stressed too. "All right, sweetie, let's get you into your wheelchair," Sarah said. She lifted Emma carefully from the bed and placed her gently in the wheelchair that sat next to it. Emma's wheelchair was not fancy or new. Sarah had bought it used from another family 2 years ago. It was a little too big for Emma, but it worked, and that was all that mattered. Sarah pushed Emma through the small apartment. Their home was not big, but it was clean and filled with love. Pictures of Emma covered the walls. There were drawings that Emma had made at school, photographs from birthdays, and even some pictures of Sarah's parents who had passed away years ago. When they reached the front door, Sarah realized they had another problem. She needed to get Emma in the wheelchair down the stairs and into the car. Their apartment was on the 2nd floor and there was no elevator. Sarah had done this 1,000 times before, but it never got easier. She picked Emma up first and carried her down the stairs. Emma wrapped her thin arms around Sarah's neck and held on tight. Sarah could feel Emma's heart beating fast against her chest. The stairs were steep and narrow. Sarah had to be very careful not to trip or slip. Once Emma was safely at the bottom, Sarah ran back up the stairs to get the wheelchair. She folded it up and carried it down. By the time she got to the bottom, she was breathing hard and sweating. It was only 8:35 a.m., but Sarah already felt exhausted. The car was parked on the street right in front of their building. It was an old sedan that Sarah had bought 6 years ago. The paint was faded, and there were some dents on the doors, but it ran. Most of the time, anyway. Sarah opened the back door and carefully placed Emma inside. She fastened the seatbelt around Emma's small body, making sure it was not too tight, but also making sure Emma was safe and secure. Then she folded the wheelchair and tried to fit it in the trunk. The trunk was full of other things that Emma needed. There was an emergency medical bag, extra clothes, and some of Emma's therapy equipment. Sarah had to move things around several times before the wheelchair finally fit. She slammed the trunk closed and ran to the driver's seat. Her hands were shaking as she put the key in the ignition. She turned the key and the car made a terrible grinding sound. Sarah's stomach dropped. Not today. Please, not today, she tried again. The car groaned and sputtered but did not start. Sarah closed her eyes and said a little prayer. She turned the key one more time and finally, the engine came to life. It sounded rough and unhealthy, but it was running. Sarah looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was 8:42 a.m. They had 33 minutes to get to the therapy center. If they were late by more than 15 minutes, they would lose the appointment. Sarah could not let that happen. Emma needed this therapy. It helped her muscles. It reduced her pain. It gave her a better quality of life. Sarah pulled out onto the street and started driving. The morning traffic was heavy. Cars were everywhere. Everyone was rushing to get to work or to take their kids to school. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tightly and focused on the road ahead. Emma sat quietly in the back seat. She was looking out the window at the world passing by. Sarah glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror and felt a wave of love wash over her. Emma deserved so much more than this. She deserved a mother who was not always stressed and tired. She deserved a nice house with an elevator. She deserved a reliable car. But Sarah was doing the best she could. She worked 2 jobs to pay for Emma's medical bills and medications. She barely slept. She had no time for friends or hobbies or any kind of personal life. Everything she did was for Emma, and she would do it all 1,000,000 times over because Emma was worth it. Emma was everything. The traffic light ahead turned red and Sarah had to stop. She looked at the clock again. They were still going to make it. Just barely, but they would make it. Sarah took a deep breath and tried to relax her shoulders. Everything was going to be okay. They were going to get to the appointment on time. Emma was going to get the help she needed. Sarah pressed on the gas pedal when the light turned green, and they continued their journey through the busy city streets. She had no idea that in just a few minutes everything was about to change. Sarah was only 2 blocks away from the therapy center when she heard the noise. It was a loud grinding sound that came from somewhere under the car. The sound was so terrible that it made her teeth hurt. She had never heard the car make a noise like that before. Please, no, Sarah whispered to herself. Her hands gripped the steering wheel even tighter. She pressed gently on the gas pedal, hoping the car would keep going for just 2 more blocks. Just 2 more blocks and they would be there. But the car had other plans. The grinding noise got louder and louder. Then the car started to shake. Sarah could feel the vibrations through the steering wheel. The engine made one last horrible sound and then everything went quiet. The car was rolling forward on its own, but the engine had died completely. Sarah's heart was pounding in her chest. She guided the car to the side of the road using what little momentum it had left. The car came to a complete stop right in the middle of a narrow residential street. There were houses on both sides, and the street was only wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other if they were careful. Sarah turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. The car was completely dead. She hit the steering wheel with her hand in frustration. Of all the days for this to happen, why did it have to be today? Mama, what's wrong? Emma's voice came from the back seat. She sounded worried. Sarah took a deep breath and forced herself to smile. She turned around to look at her daughter. The car stopped working, sweetie. But don't worry. Everything is going to be okay. Emma looked at her mother with those big, trusting eyes. She believed every word her mother said. Sarah wished she could believe her own words too. Sarah looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was 9:03 a.m. They had 12 minutes to get to the appointment. The therapy center was so close. Sarah could actually see the building from where they were. It was just 2 blocks down the street. If she was alone, she could run there in less than 2 minutes, but she was not alone. She had Emma, and Emma could not walk. Emma needed her wheelchair. Sarah got out of the car and looked around. The street was quiet. There were no other cars coming from either direction at that moment. A few people were walking on the sidewalks, but they were far away and not paying attention to her. She opened the trunk and pulled out Emma's wheelchair. She unfolded it quickly and set it up on the sidewalk. Then she opened the back door of the car and looked at Emma. This was when Sarah had to make a very difficult decision. She could stay with the car and call for help, but by the time anyone came to help them, the appointment would be over. They would lose their spot. It would be another 3 months or more before they could get another appointment, or she could carry Emma to the therapy center. It was only 2 blocks. Sarah had carried Emma before. She was small for her age because of her condition. But Emma was still 7 years old, and 7-year-olds are not light. Plus, Emma's muscle spasms made her difficult to hold. Her arms and legs would sometimes move suddenly without warning. Sarah looked at the therapy center in the distance. She looked at Emma. She looked at the clock. They had 11 minutes now. She made her decision. "Emma, sweetie, I'm going to carry you to your appointment. The car can't take us, so Mama will carry you." "Is that okay?" Emma nodded. She did not fully understand why they could not just use the wheelchair, but she trusted her mother completely. Sarah reached in and unbuckled Emma's seatbelt. She carefully lifted her daughter out of the car. Emma immediately wrapped her thin arms around Sarah's neck. Sarah adjusted her hold so that one arm was under Emma's legs and the other arm was supporting Emma's back. Emma was heavier than Sarah remembered, or maybe Sarah was just more tired than usual. Either way, Sarah could feel the weight of her daughter immediately. Her arms were already starting to hurt, and they had not even started walking yet. Sarah locked the car and turned on the hazard lights. She hoped that would be enough to let other drivers know that the car was broken down, and not just parked in the middle of the road. Then she started walking. The first few steps were okay. Sarah adjusted Emma in her arms and found a position that was a little more comfortable. Emma's head rested on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah could feel Emma's breath on her neck, warm and steady. "It's okay, Mama. You're strong," Emma whispered. Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She could not cry now. She needed to focus on getting Emma to the appointment. The sidewalk was old and cracked in many places. Sarah had to watch where she was stepping carefully. If she tripped and fell while carrying Emma, they could both get seriously hurt. Emma's bones were fragile because of her condition. A fall could mean a broken bone, which could mean a hospital visit, which could mean thousands of dollars in medical bills that Sarah did not have. After walking for about half a block, Sarah's arms were burning. The muscles in her shoulders and back were screaming at her to stop and rest. But she could not stop. She could not rest. They had 9 minutes left. Emma suddenly had a muscle spasm. Her right leg kicked out sharply, and Sarah almost dropped her. Sarah stumbled but managed to keep her balance. She stopped for a moment to readjust her grip on Emma. "I'm sorry, Mama," Emma said quietly. Sarah could hear the guilt in her daughter's voice. "Don't be sorry, baby. It's not your fault. You can't control it." "I know that," Sarah said. She kissed the top of Emma's head and continued walking. Other people on the street were starting to notice them. An older woman walking a small dog looked at them with concern. A man getting into his car stopped and watched them for a moment. Sarah could feel their eyes on her, but no one said anything. No one offered to help. Sarah wanted to scream at them. She wanted to ask them why they were just standing there watching, instead of offering to give them a ride for 2 blocks. But she did not have the energy to scream. She needed all her energy just to keep moving forward. She made it 1 full block. 1 block down, 1 block to go. Sarah's breathing was heavy now. Sweat was running down her face and back. Her arms felt like they were going to fall off. Emma seemed to be getting heavier with every step. "We're almost there, sweetie. Just a little bit more," Sarah said, though she was not sure if she was saying it to Emma or to herself. That was when she heard the car horn behind her. It was loud and angry. One long blast that seemed to go on forever. Sarah turned her head slightly and saw a black car behind her old sedan. The driver was honking at her car, which was still sitting in the middle of the road with its hazard lights flashing. Sarah could not worry about that right now. She had to keep walking. They had 7 minutes left. The therapy center was so close now. She could see people going in and out of the building. She was going to make it. They were going to make it, but the car horn did not stop. It kept honking and honking. Sarah heard the car's engine rev up. Then she heard the sound of the car driving past her broken-down sedan. The black car was now driving slowly down the street behind her. Sarah's heart started beating even faster. She did not like this. Something about this situation felt wrong. She walked a little faster. Even though her arms were screaming in pain, she just wanted to get Emma inside the building where they would be safe. The black car pulled up next to her on the street. Sarah kept her eyes forward and kept walking. She did not want to look at the driver. She just wanted to get to the therapy center. But then the driver rolled down his window and Sarah heard a man's voice. It was loud and angry and full of frustration. The voice made Sarah flinch and she held Emma a little tighter. What happened next would change everything for both Sarah and the man in the black car. Neither of them knew it yet, but their lives were about to become connected in a way that neither of them could have ever predicted. Marcus Henderson had been having a terrible morning from the moment he woke up. His alarm clock had gone off at the wrong time because of a power outage during the night. Then he realized he had forgotten to set out his clothes the night before, so he had to waste time finding something to wear. When he finally got dressed and went to make coffee, he discovered that his coffee maker had broken. Marcus was a sales manager at a large company downtown. He had an important meeting with a client this morning at 9:30 a.m. This client was worth millions of dollars to his company. If Marcus could close this deal, he would get a huge bonus, maybe even a promotion. But if he messed this up, his boss would be furious. He had already been running late when he left his house. Then, as he was driving and trying to drink a cup of coffee he had bought from a drive-thru, he hit a bump in the road. The hot coffee splashed all over his white shirt and gray tie. Marcus had yelled several curse words that he would never say in front of his mother. Now his shirt had a huge brown stain on it. He was 15 minutes late, and he was stuck in traffic on a residential street that he thought would be a shortcut. Marcus was gripping his steering wheel so hard that his knuckles were turning white. His jaw was clenched tight, and he could feel a headache starting to form behind his eyes. That was when he saw the car sitting in the middle of the road ahead of him. It was an old beat-up sedan with its hazard lights flashing. There was no one inside it. The car was just sitting there, blocking the entire narrow street. Marcus felt his blood pressure rising. He could not believe this. Of all the days for someone to abandon their car in the middle of the road, it had to be today. He honked his horn. One long, loud blast. No one came running to move the car. He honked again. And again. Still nothing. Marcus looked at the clock on his dashboard. He was now 17 minutes late for his meeting. His boss had already called him twice. Marcus had sent a text saying he was on his way, but he knew his boss was getting impatient. Marcus tried to see if he could drive around the abandoned car, but the street was too narrow. There were cars parked on both sides, and there was not enough room to squeeze past. He was completely stuck. That was when he saw her. A woman was walking on the sidewalk ahead, moving slowly. Something about the way she was walking made Marcus suspicious. She looked like she was carrying something heavy, but from his angle he could not quite see what it was. Then it clicked in Marcus's mind. That woman must be the owner of the car. She had abandoned her car in the middle of the road and was just walking away like it was no big deal. Like she did not care that other people had places to be. Marcus felt anger explode inside his chest. How could someone be so selfish? How could someone be so inconsiderate? He pressed on the gas pedal and drove around the abandoned car, going up onto the sidewalk slightly to get past it. He did not care if he scratched his car. He was too angry to care about anything except confronting this woman who had ruined his morning. He drove slowly down the street until he caught up with the woman. Then he rolled down his window and leaned out. "Are you kidding me?" Marcus yelled. His voice was loud and harsh. "You can't just leave your car in the middle of the road. Some of us have important places to be." The woman turned her head slightly to look at him, but she did not stop walking. Marcus could see that she was sweating and breathing hard. Her face was red from effort. But he did not care about that. All he cared about was that his morning was ruined because of her. "Did you hear me? You need to move your car right now." Marcus continued yelling. He was leaning out the window so far that his seatbelt was digging into his shoulder. The woman opened her mouth like she was trying to say something, but Marcus did not give her a chance to speak. He was on a roll now, and all the frustration from his terrible morning was pouring out. "I don't care what your excuse is. You can't just abandon your car like that. It's illegal. It's inconsiderate. Do you have any idea how many people you're inconveniencing right now?" Marcus was so focused on yelling at the woman that he was not really looking at her. He was not seeing the details. He was just seeing a target for all his anger and frustration. "I have an extremely important meeting that I'm now late for because of you. Do you understand that? My entire career could be affected because you're too lazy to move your car." The woman stopped walking. She turned to face Marcus fully for the first time. She looked exhausted. There were tears forming in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice was shaky. "Sir, I'm sorry, but my car broke down. I don't want to hear excuses." Marcus cut her off. "Everyone has problems. That doesn't give you the right to block the road. Move your car now or I'm calling the police." Marcus pulled out his phone and held it up so the woman could see it. He was really going to do it. He was going to call the police and report her for abandoning her vehicle. Maybe that would teach her to be more considerate of other people. But then something happened. The woman suddenly stumbled slightly. She adjusted her arms, and for the first time, Marcus really looked at what she was carrying. It was not a bag or a box or packages from shopping. It was a child, a little girl with thin arms and legs that hung at odd angles. The child's head was resting on the woman's shoulder, and her eyes were wide and scared because of all the yelling. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The anger that had been burning so hot inside him suddenly turned cold. His hand holding the phone dropped to his lap. The woman adjusted her grip on the child again, and Marcus could see now that this was not a normal situation. The child was not just being carried because she was tired. Something was different about her. The way her legs hung, the way her head was positioned, the medical alert bracelet that Marcus could now see on her tiny wrist. "My daughter has cerebral palsy," the woman said. Her voice was quiet but firm. "My car died back there. Her therapy appointment is in 5 minutes, and we've waited 3 months for it. I'm sorry about blocking the road, but I have to get her there. I have to." Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. All the air left his lungs. He stared at the woman and the little girl in her arms, and suddenly everything about his morning felt very small and very unimportant. The little girl was looking at him now. She had big brown eyes that looked too big for her small face. She looked scared. Marcus realized that he had scared her with his yelling. This innocent child who had done nothing wrong was afraid of him because he had been screaming at her mother. The woman turned away from Marcus and started walking again. She was moving even more slowly now, like Marcus's yelling had taken the last bit of energy she had. Marcus could see her arms shaking from the effort of carrying her daughter. Every step looked painful. Marcus sat in his car, his window still rolled down, his phone still in his hand. He watched the woman walk away from him, struggling with every step. He looked at his phone. The time showed 9:18 a.m. His meeting had started 18 minutes ago, but Marcus suddenly did not care about the meeting anymore. He did not care about the bonus or the promotion or what his boss would say. All he could think about was the look on that little girl's face. All he could think about was how he had yelled at a woman who was just trying to get her disabled daughter to a medical appointment. Marcus had never felt shame like this before. It was a heavy, sick feeling that settled in his chest and made it hard to breathe. He thought about his own mother, who had raised him to be kind and respectful. He thought about his younger sister, who had always looked up to him. What would they think if they had heard him yelling at a struggling single mother? The woman was getting further away now. She was almost at the building that must be the therapy center. Marcus could see her stumble again, and his heart clenched with worry. What if she fell? What if she dropped the little girl? Marcus made a decision. He pulled his car over to the side of the road and parked it. He turned off the engine and got out. His hands were shaking slightly as he closed the car door. He had to make this right. He had to apologize. He had to help. He started walking quickly toward the woman and her daughter. He had no idea what he was going to say. He had no idea if the woman would even want his help after how terrible he had been to her, but he had to try. As Marcus walked, he thought about all the times he had complained about his life. He complained about traffic. He complained about his job. He complained about his apartment being too small. But this woman was carrying her disabled daughter 2 blocks in the summer heat because her car had broken down, and she had not complained once. She had just done what she needed to do to take care of her child. Marcus caught up to them just as they reached the entrance to the therapy center. The woman was breathing so hard that Marcus was worried she might pass out. The little girl was still holding tight to her mother's neck, her small face pressed against her mother's shoulder. "Ma'am," Marcus said quietly. "Please wait." The woman turned to look at him. There was fear in her eyes now, mixed with the exhaustion. Marcus realized she probably thought he was going to yell at her again. "I am so sorry," Marcus said. His voice cracked on the last word. "I was completely wrong. I had no right to speak to you that way. I had no idea what you were dealing with. Please let me help you, please." Sarah stood at the entrance of the therapy center, her arms still wrapped around Emma. She looked at the man who had been yelling at her just moments ago. His face looked completely different now. The anger was gone. Instead, he looked sad and ashamed. His eyes were red, like he might cry. Sarah did not know what to do. Part of her wanted to tell him to go away and leave them alone. He had been so mean to her. He had yelled at her when she was already struggling. He had made an already difficult situation even worse. But another part of her could see that he was truly sorry. She could see the regret written all over his face. Emma lifted her head from Sarah's shoulder and looked at the man. Her big brown eyes studied his face carefully. Emma was only 7 years old, but she was very good at reading people. She had to be. Her whole life depended on understanding when someone was going to be gentle with her, and when someone might accidentally hurt her. "Mama, my arms are tired," Emma said softly. She had been holding on to Sarah's neck for so long that her arms were starting to hurt. Plus, Emma's muscles did not work the same way other children's muscles did. Holding a position for a long time was very hard for her. Sarah looked down at her daughter and felt a rush of love and worry. Emma's face was pale and there were dark circles under her eyes. The walk had been hard on her too. Sarah needed to get Emma inside to the appointment. "They were already late, I know, sweetie. We're going inside right now," Sarah said. She turned to walk into the building, trying to ignore the man standing there. "Please," Marcus said again. "At least let me open the door for you," Sarah stopped. She was so tired. Her arms felt like they were going to fall off. Her back was screaming in pain. Her legs were shaking. And they still had to go through the whole therapy appointment, which would last an hour. Then they would have to figure out how to get home with a broken-down car. Sarah turned to look at Marcus again. She studied his face the same way Emma had. She was trying to decide if he was being genuine or if this was some kind of trick, but all she saw in his eyes was sincere regret and a genuine desire to help. "Okay," Sarah said quietly. "You can open the door." Marcus rushed forward and pulled open the heavy glass door. He held it wide so Sarah could walk through easily without having to worry about the door closing on them. As Sarah passed by him, Marcus got a closer look at Emma. The little girl was so small. She looked like she might be only 5 years old, even though Marcus had heard Sarah say she was old enough to have waited 3 months for an appointment. Emma's legs were thin and hung at angles that did not look natural. Her arms, which were wrapped around her mother's neck, were shaking slightly from the effort of holding on. But what struck Marcus the most were Emma's eyes. Despite everything she had just been through, despite being carried 2 blocks in the heat, despite being scared by a stranger yelling at her mother, Emma's eyes were kind. There was no anger in them, no resentment, just a gentle curiosity as she looked at Marcus. Marcus followed Sarah and Emma into the building. The therapy center was clean and bright. There were colorful pictures on the walls and toys in the waiting area. Several other families were sitting in chairs waiting for their appointments. Some of them had children in wheelchairs. Some had children with leg braces or other medical equipment. Sarah walked up to the reception desk. A woman with gray hair and a kind smile looked up from her computer. "Hi, I'm Sarah Mitchell. We have a 9:15 appointment for Emma Mitchell with Dr. Peterson," Sarah said. She was trying to keep her voice steady, but Marcus could hear the exhaustion in it. The receptionist looked at her computer screen and then at the clock on the wall. It was 9:22 a.m. "You're a few minutes late, but Dr. Peterson is running a little behind today anyway, so you're fine. Can you fill out these forms while you wait?" The receptionist handed Sarah a clipboard with several papers attached to it. Sarah looked at the clipboard and then at Emma in her arms. How was she supposed to fill out forms while holding Emma? She could not put Emma down on the floor. Emma could not sit up on her own without support. Marcus saw Sarah's problem immediately. "Here," he said, stepping forward. "I'll hold the clipboard for you. You can just tell me what to write and I'll write it." Sarah looked at him with surprise. She had not expected this. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I want to," Marcus replied. "Please, it's the least I can do." Sarah was too tired to argue. She nodded and moved over to one of the chairs in the waiting area. She sat down carefully, still holding Emma. Emma immediately relaxed a little bit now that her mother was sitting. The position was more comfortable for both of them. Marcus sat in the chair next to them. He held the clipboard and had a pen ready. "Okay, what's the first question?" he asked. Sarah started answering the questions on the form. Patient's full name, date of birth, address, phone number, insurance information, medical history, current medications. Marcus wrote down everything Sarah told him. His handwriting was messy because he was writing fast, but it was readable. As Sarah answered the questions, Marcus started to understand more about Emma's condition. Emma took 3 different medications every day. She had been in and out of the hospital several times. She had difficulties with eating, speaking, and moving. She needed help with almost everything in her daily life. Marcus thought about his own childhood. He had been healthy and strong. He had played football in high school. He had never had to worry about whether he could walk or talk or feed himself. He had taken all of that for granted. He still took it for granted. Last question, Marcus said. Emergency contact name and phone number. Sarah paused. She looked down at Emma and then back at Marcus. Just put my name and number again, she said quietly. Marcus understood what that meant. Sarah had no one else. No husband. No parents or siblings nearby. No close friends who could be called in an emergency. It was just Sarah and Emma, facing the world alone. Marcus felt his heart break a little bit more. He wrote Sarah's name and number in the emergency contact space. Then he stood up and took the clipboard back to the receptionist. When he came back, Sarah was adjusting Emma's position in her lap. Emma had started to have small muscle spasms in her legs. They would kick out suddenly, and Sarah had to hold them gently to keep Emma from hurting herself. Does that hurt her? Marcus asked quietly, sitting back down in his chair. Sarah looked at him, surprised that he was asking. Most people did not ask questions about Emma's condition. They either stared rudely or looked away uncomfortably. Sometimes, Sarah answered, the spasms can be painful. But Emma is very brave. She handles it better than most adults would. Emma looked at Marcus and gave him a small smile. It was the first time she had smiled since he had yelled at her mother. That small smile made Marcus feel like crying. I'm Marcus, by the way, he said to Emma, his voice gentle. What's your name? Emma, the little girl said. Her voice was quiet and some of the sounds were not quite right, but Marcus understood. It's very nice to meet you, Emma, Marcus said. I'm sorry I scared you earlier. That was wrong of me. Emma tilted her head slightly, studying him. Then she said, It's okay. Mama says everyone has bad days. Marcus looked at Sarah. Sarah gave him a small, tired smile. I try to teach her that people are not defined by their worst moments, she explained. Marcus felt a lump forming in his throat. Here was this woman who had every reason to be angry at him, who was struggling so much, and she was still teaching her daughter about forgiveness and understanding. Marcus did not think he had ever met anyone quite like Sarah Mitchell. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Other families came and went. Names were called and people disappeared down the hallway for their appointments. Marcus kept thinking about his meeting. It had started 25 minutes ago. He should call his boss. He should explain what happened. But he could not make himself care about the meeting right now. Emma Mitchell? A woman in blue scrubs appeared in the doorway. She had a friendly face and was holding a tablet. Sarah stood up carefully, holding Emma. That's us, she said. Marcus stood up too. Do you need help carrying her? He asked. Sarah hesitated. She had carried Emma this far. She could carry her a bit further. But she was so tired. And Emma seemed comfortable now. Maybe it would be okay to accept help. Okay, Sarah said. But you have to support her head and her back. And if she has a spasm, don't panic. Just hold her gently. Marcus nodded seriously. Sarah carefully transferred Emma into Marcus's arms. Emma tensed up at first, unsure about this stranger holding her. But Marcus held her gently and securely, just like Sarah had instructed. After a moment, Emma relaxed. Marcus could not believe how light Emma was. She felt fragile in his arms, like she might break if he held her wrong. He followed Sarah and the therapist down the hallway, being very careful with each step. The therapist led them into a large room filled with exercise equipment, mats, and therapy tools. Dr. Peterson, a woman with short blonde hair and a warm smile, was waiting for them. Hello, Emma. I'm so glad you're here, Dr. Peterson said cheerfully. Let's get started and see what we can do to help those muscles feel better. Marcus carefully placed Emma on the therapy mat where Dr. Peterson indicated. Emma immediately reached for Sarah's hand, holding it tight. Sarah knelt down next to the mat and Marcus stepped back to give them space. Marcus sat in the waiting room for the entire hour that Emma was in therapy. He could have left. Sarah probably expected him to leave, but he could not make himself walk out the door. Every time he thought about leaving, he remembered the look on Emma's face when he had been yelling. He remembered how Sarah's arms had been shaking from carrying her daughter. He could not just walk away. Instead, he used the time to make phone calls. First, he called his boss. That conversation did not go well. His boss was furious that Marcus had missed the meeting without any warning. Marcus tried to explain what had happened, but his boss did not want to hear it. "I don't care about your excuses, Marcus. That client was worth millions, and you didn't even have the courtesy to call and let us know you weren't coming. Do you have any idea how that made our company look?" Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, sir. You're right. I should have called. But I'm dealing with an emergency situation right now and I can't leave." "What kind of emergency?" his boss demanded. Marcus looked toward the hallway where Sarah and Emma had disappeared. "It's complicated, but I need to be here. I'll come into the office tomorrow and we can discuss everything then." His boss said a few more angry things and then hung up. Marcus knew he would probably face serious consequences at work. He might even lose his job. But sitting there in that waiting room surrounded by families dealing with real challenges, Marcus realized that his job was not the most important thing in his life. He'd been acting like it was, but it was not. Next, Marcus called a towing company. He explained where Sarah's car was and asked them to tow it to a good mechanic shop. The towing company said they would send someone right away. Then Marcus called the mechanic shop and explained the situation. He asked them to check the car and call him with an estimate of what it would cost to fix. After making those calls, Marcus did something he had not done in a very long time. He just sat quietly and thought. He thought about his life and his priorities. He thought about how he spent his time and energy. He thought about the last time he had helped someone just because they needed help, not because it would benefit him somehow. Marcus could not remember the last time. That realization made him feel sad and ashamed. When the therapy session was over, Sarah came out carrying Emma again. Emma looked tired but happy. Dr. Peterson walked with them, explaining exercises that Sarah should do with Emma at home. Marcus stood up when he saw them. Sarah looked surprised that he was still there. "You waited?" she asked. "I wanted to make sure you both were okay," Marcus said. He looked at Dr. Peterson. "How did the session go?" "Emma did wonderfully," Dr. Peterson said with a smile. "She's a very strong little girl. We made good progress today." She handed Sarah some papers with instructions and exercise diagrams. "I'll see you in 2 weeks, Emma." Sarah thanked the therapist and then turned to Marcus. She still looked exhausted, but there was something different in her eyes now. The fear and wariness were gone. Now she just looked confused about why this stranger was being so kind to her. "I need to talk to you about something," Marcus said. "Can we sit down for a minute?" Sarah nodded slowly. They walked back to the waiting area and sat in the chairs. Emma curled up in Sarah's lap, looking sleepy after all the work she had done in therapy. "I called a towing company," Marcus said. "They're towing your car to a mechanic shop. I also called the shop and asked them to check it and let me know what's wrong with it." Sarah's eyes went wide. "You did what?" "Why would you do that?" "Because you need help and I can help," Marcus said simply. "I know what I did earlier was terrible. I yelled at you when you were already struggling. I made assumptions without knowing the situation. I was selfish and rude. I can't take that back, but I can try to make it right." Sarah shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. You apologized. That's enough." "It's not enough," Marcus said firmly. "Not for me. Please let me help you. Let me do something good to make up for the bad." Sarah looked down at Emma, who was starting to fall asleep in her arms. She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Sarah had been on her own for so long. She had learned not to rely on anyone but herself. Accepting help felt strange and uncomfortable, but she was also practical. Her car was broken. She had no idea how she was going to get it fixed. She barely had enough money to pay for Emma's medications and their rent. A car repair could cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars that she simply did not have. "Okay," Sarah said finally. "You can help with the car, but I'm paying for the repairs." "I don't want charity," Marcus wanted to argue, but he could see the pride and dignity in Sarah's face. She was barely keeping her head above water, but she still had her pride. He respected that. All right, Marcus said. We'll work something out. But right now, the main thing is getting you and Emma home. My car is parked down the street. Can I give you both a ride? Sarah looked at Marcus carefully. She was a mother, and her first responsibility was to keep Emma safe. She did not know this man. She had only met him an hour ago, and their first meeting had been him yelling at her. Should she really get in a car with him? Marcus saw the hesitation on her face, and he understood completely. I get it, he said. You don't know me. You have to be careful. Here, take a picture of my driver's license and my business card, and take a picture of my license plate when we get to my car. Send all of it to someone you trust. Tell them where you're going. Marcus pulled out his wallet and showed Sarah his license. He also gave her 2 of his business cards. Sarah took out her phone and took pictures of everything. I'm going to send these to my neighbor, Sarah said. She's the closest thing I have to a friend. She watches Emma sometimes when I work. That's smart, Marcus said. I would do the same thing if I were you. They walked out of the therapy center together. Marcus led them to his black car. It was a nice car, much nicer than Sarah's old sedan. It was clean and shiny and looked very expensive. Marcus opened the back door for Sarah. She climbed in with Emma still in her arms. Marcus brought Emma's wheelchair, which he had retrieved from Sarah's car earlier without telling her. He folded it and put it in his trunk. What's your address? Marcus asked as he got in the driver's seat. Sarah told him. Marcus put it into his GPS. The drive would take about 15 minutes. They drove in silence for the first few minutes. Emma had fallen completely asleep in Sarah's arms. Her little face was peaceful and relaxed. She's beautiful, Marcus said quietly, glancing at them in the rearview mirror. Thank you, Sarah said. She's my whole world. How long has she had cerebral palsy? Marcus asked. Then he quickly added, I'm sorry if that's too personal. You don't have to answer. No, it's okay, Sarah said. She was born with it. There were complications during delivery. The doctor said she might not survive, but she did. Emma is the strongest person I've ever known. Every single day is hard for her, but she never complains. She never asks, why me? She just keeps going. Marcus felt his throat tighten. And her father? He asked quietly. Sarah's face hardened slightly. He left when Emma was 6 months old. He said he couldn't handle it. He said this wasn't what he signed up for. She paused and looked down at Emma. But Emma and I are better off without him. We don't need someone who only loves us when things are easy. Marcus drove in silence, processing this information. He could not imagine walking away from a child, especially a child who needed extra help and support. What kind of man would do that? They arrived at Sarah's apartment building. It was an old building in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The paint on the outside was peeling, and some of the windows were cracked. But it was clean, and there were flower boxes in some of the windows showing that people cared about their homes. Marcus parked and got out. He helped Sarah carry Emma up the stairs to her second-floor apartment. Sarah unlocked the door and led Marcus inside. The apartment was small but tidy. There were pictures everywhere of Emma. The furniture was old and worn, but everything was clean and well organized. Marcus could see medical supplies stacked neatly in one corner. There were medications on the kitchen counter with carefully written labels. Sarah carried Emma to her bedroom and laid her gently on the bed. Emma stirred slightly but did not wake up. Sarah covered her with a blanket and kissed her forehead. Then she walked back out to the living room where Marcus was waiting. Thank you for the ride, Sarah said. And for everything else. You didn't have to do any of that. Yes, I did, Marcus said. Sarah, I need you to understand something. What I did this morning was wrong on every level. I judged you without knowing anything about your situation. I yelled at you when you were doing your best. I scared your daughter. I'm deeply ashamed of my behavior. Sarah nodded slowly. I appreciate that, and I accept your apology. There's something else, Marcus said. He pulled out his phone. The mechanic called while we were driving. Your car needs a new transmission. The total cost with labor is going to be about $3,000. Sarah felt her stomach drop. $3,000. She did not have $3,000. She did not have $300. After paying rent and buying Emma's medications and buying food, Sarah had almost nothing left each month. "I can't afford that," Sarah whispered. She felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She could not cry in front of this stranger. "I know," Marcus said gently, "and I want to pay for it." "No," Sarah said immediately. "Absolutely not. I already told you I don't want charity." "It's not charity," Marcus argued. "Think of it as me paying for my mistake." "I yelled at you. I made your morning worse. Let me make it better." $3,000 is way more than an apology requires," Sarah said firmly. Marcus sighed. He could see that Sarah was not going to accept his help easily. She was proud and independent even when she was desperate. "Okay, how about this?" Marcus said. "I'll loan you the money. You can pay me back whenever you're able. No interest. No time limit. Just pay me back when you can." Sarah bit her lip. She needed her car. She needed to be able to get Emma to her appointments and to her own jobs. Without a car, their lives would become almost impossible. "Okay," Sarah said finally, "but I'm serious about paying you back." "I'll pay you back every cent. I know you will," Marcus said. He meant it too. He could tell that Sarah was someone who kept her promises. Marcus stayed for a few more minutes, making sure Sarah had his phone number and email address. He told her the mechanic would have the car ready in 3 days. 3 days later, Marcus picked up Sarah's car from the mechanic and drove it to her apartment building. He had paid the full amount even though Sarah had asked him to let her handle it. Marcus knew she could not afford it, and he was not going to let her go deeper into debt because of a car repair. When he knocked on Sarah's door, she answered quickly. She looked better than she had 3 days ago. She had gotten some rest and the worry lines on her face were not quite as deep. "Your car is ready," Marcus said, holding up the keys. "It's parked right outside." Sarah took the keys and looked at them for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus. "How much do I owe you?" "We can talk about that later," Marcus said. "Right now I want to talk to you about something else." Sarah invited him inside. Emma was sitting in her wheelchair in the living room, coloring in a coloring book. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up with a smile. "Marcus," Emma said happily. She held up her coloring book to show him. "Look, I colored a butterfly." Marcus walked over and looked at the picture. It was a butterfly with uneven colors and lines that went outside the boundaries, but it was beautiful, because Emma had made it. "That's wonderful, Emma," Marcus said sincerely. "You're a very talented artist." Emma beamed with pride. Sarah watched this interaction with surprise. Emma was usually shy around people she did not know well. But she seemed to really like Marcus. Marcus sat down on the couch and Sarah sat in the chair across from him. Emma went back to her coloring, humming softly to herself. "I've been doing some research over the last few days," Marcus said. "I've been learning about cerebral palsy and about resources available for families like yours. Did you know there's a non-profit organization in the city that provides free transportation to medical appointments for children with disabilities?" Sarah shook her head. "I had no idea. There are also support groups for parents of children with special needs, and there are grants and financial assistance programs that you might qualify for." Marcus pulled out a folder from his bag. It was filled with papers and printouts. "I made copies of everything I found. I thought it might be helpful." Sarah took the folder and looked through it. There were so many resources listed. Organizations she had never heard of. Programs she did not know existed. Her eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing all of this?" Sarah asked. Her voice was shaky with emotion. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. "When I yelled at you that morning, I was so focused on my own problems that I couldn't see anyone else's. I thought my meeting was the most important thing in the world. I thought being late was the worst thing that could happen to me." He paused and looked at Emma, who was concentrating hard on coloring inside the lines. But then I saw you and Emma, and I realized how selfish I had been. You were dealing with real challenges. You were fighting real battles, and you were doing it all alone. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about how many other people I might have judged or dismissed because I was too wrapped up in my own little world. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. You made a mistake, but you apologized. You helped us. You don't have to keep helping us. I want to, Marcus said firmly. Not because I feel guilty, although I do, but because I've learned something important from you and Emma. I've learned about strength and grace and unconditional love. I've learned about what really matters in life. Over the following weeks, Marcus became a regular presence in Sarah and Emma's lives. He would stop by every few days to check on them. He would bring dinner sometimes, or he would take Emma to the park while Sarah ran errands. He never made Sarah feel like she owed him anything. He just showed up as a friend. Marcus also started volunteering with the non-profit organization he had told Sarah about. The organization provided support services for families with disabled children. Marcus used his business skills to help them with fundraising and organization. He discovered that he was good at it, and more importantly, he discovered that it made him happy in a way his sales job never had. One day, about 2 months after their first meeting, Marcus showed up at Sarah's apartment with some big news. I quit my job, he announced. Sarah's eyes went wide. You what? I quit, Marcus repeated. I've been so unhappy there for so long, but I was too afraid to leave. After everything that happened with you and Emma, I realized life is too short to spend it doing something that doesn't matter to me. What are you going to do? Sarah asked, worried for him. I'm going to work full-time for the non-profit, Marcus said with a huge smile. They offered me a position as their director of development. The pay is less than what I was making, but I'll be doing work that actually makes a difference. I'll be helping families like yours. Sarah stood up and hugged Marcus. It was the first time she had hugged him, and it took Marcus by surprise. But he hugged her back, feeling grateful for this friendship that had come from such an unexpected place. Emma clapped her hands from her wheelchair. Yay, Marcus. You're going to help more kids like me. That's right, Emma, Marcus said. I'm going to help lots of kids, and you were the one who inspired me to do it. As the months passed, the friendship between Marcus, Sarah, and Emma grew stronger. Marcus introduced Sarah to other parents in the support group, and Sarah finally found the community she had been missing. She made friends with other mothers who understood what she was going through. She learned about resources and strategies that made her life easier. Marcus also introduced Sarah to someone else from the support group. His name was Daniel, and he was a single father raising a son with Down syndrome. Daniel and Sarah bonded immediately over their shared experiences. They started meeting for coffee while their children had playdates. 6 months after that difficult morning when Marcus had yelled at Sarah, the nonprofit organization held a big fundraising gala. Marcus had worked hard to organize the event, and it was a huge success. They raised over $200,000 that night. Sarah and Emma attended the gala. Sarah wore a dress that she had borrowed from her new friend from the support group. Emma wore a purple dress that Marcus had bought her, purple being her favorite color. Emma's wheelchair was decorated with ribbons and flowers. During the event, Marcus gave a speech. He stood on the stage in front of hundreds of people and told the story of how he had met Sarah and Emma. He did not leave out any details. He told everyone about how he had yelled at a struggling mother. He told them about his selfishness and his anger. He told them about the moment when he realized how wrong he had been. I was having a bad morning, Marcus said to the crowd. But Sarah was having a bad life. Or at least, that's what I thought at first, but I was wrong about that too. Sarah wasn't having a bad life. She was having a challenging life, but she was facing those challenges with more strength and grace than I had ever shown in my easy life. He paused and looked at Sarah and Emma sitting at their table. Emma was grinning and waving at him. Sarah had tears running down her face, but she was smiling. Sarah taught me that everyone we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about. She taught me that a moment of patience and kindness can change everything. She taught me that helping others is not about feeling superior or charitable. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and lifting each other up. The crowd applauded. Marcus continued speaking, but this time, he talked about the work the nonprofit was doing and the families they were helping. He introduced several families who had benefited from the organization's services. The families stood and were recognized by the crowd. After the speech, people came up to Marcus to congratulate him and to write donation checks. The event was a massive success. But the best part of the night for Marcus was when Emma came up to him, and he picked her up carefully. "I'm proud of you, Marcus," Emma said in her soft, imperfect voice. "You're a good person now." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. "I was always a person, Emma, but you taught me how to be a good one." Sarah walked over and joined them. She put her hand on Marcus's arm. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" Marcus asked. "For seeing us," Sarah said. "For not just walking away. For choosing to be better." Marcus shook his head. "I should be thanking you. That morning when my car broke down." "My car," Sarah corrected with a laugh. "Right, your car," Marcus said with a smile. "That morning was the worst morning of my life, and also the best morning of my life. It was the morning I stopped being someone who just took from the world and started being someone who gave back." Later that night, after the gala was over, Marcus drove Sarah and Emma home. Emma fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from all the excitement. Sarah sat in the front passenger seat looking out the window at the city lights. "Daniel asked me out on a date," Sarah said suddenly. Marcus grinned. "Really? That's great. What did you say?" "I said yes," Sarah replied. She turned to look at Marcus. "Is that okay?" "Why wouldn't it be okay?" Marcus asked, genuinely confused. "I don't know," Sarah said. "I guess I just wanted to make sure you were okay with it." Marcus pulled up in front of Sarah's apartment building and parked. He turned to look at her. "Sarah, I want you to be happy. You deserve to be happy. Daniel is a good guy, and I think you two would be great together." Sarah smiled. "You're a good guy too, Marcus." "I'm trying to be," Marcus said. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sarah said, "Do you remember what you said that morning when you were yelling at me?" Marcus winced. "Unfortunately, yes. I said some pretty terrible things." "You said you had important places to be," Sarah said. "You said your career could be affected. Do you ever regret missing that meeting?" Marcus thought about it. He thought about the job he had quit. He thought about the life he had been living before. He thought about the person he had been. "No," Marcus said honestly. "I don't regret it at all. I lost a job that was making me miserable. But I gained a purpose that makes me happy. I gained friends who inspire me every day. I gained a life that actually means something." He looked back at Emma sleeping peacefully in the back seat. "That morning I thought I was having the worst day of my life, but it turned out to be the day my real life started." Sarah reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand. "For Emma and me too." Marcus helped Sarah carry Emma upstairs to the apartment. They got Emma into bed without waking her. Then Marcus said goodnight and headed home to his own apartment. As he drove through the city streets, Marcus thought about how much his life had changed in just 6 months. He had a new job that he loved. He had new friends who mattered to him. He had a new purpose that gave his life meaning. But most importantly, Marcus had learned the most valuable lesson of his life. He had learned that every person he passed on the street had a story. Every person was fighting battles that he knew nothing about. Every person deserved kindness and patience and compassion. Marcus had learned that one moment of anger could cause harm, but one moment of kindness could change everything. He had learned that helping others was not a burden or an obligation. It was a privilege and a joy. He had learned that his worst moment had become his greatest opportunity. His moment of shame had become his moment of transformation. And it had. All started with a broken-down car, a struggling mother, a little girl with cerebral palsy, and one angry man who decided to be better. Marcus smiled as he drove home. Tomorrow he would wake up early and go to the nonprofit office. There would be families to help and programs to organize and fundraising to do. There would be children like Emma who needed support, and mothers like Sarah who needed a community. Marcus could not wait. For the first time in his life, he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. And it had all started with the worst morning of his life, which had turned into the best thing that ever happened to him.